what we've got here is a repeat, a three-peat of 11.6. So this is one that I remember was one of the, when it first came out, I remember when they did a repeat and it was a big shock, like, oh my gosh, they're repeating a workout. And then of course that has been the classic thing that we've seen every year. For all you guys that voted for this, I think there's a couple reasons why you probably voted for this one. If a lot of people probably voted for it because it only has, if you're limited on your chest to bar pull-ups, then it's kind of a good workout because it doesn't require large sets until later on. If some people probably voted for it too because it's a 7-minute workout and they'd rather just get a good workout in. I think a lot of people might have voted for it too because they wanted to avoid chest to bar or overhead squats. If you're not an overhead squat person, this is probably the best option for you. So let's start breaking it down. It's 3, 6, 9, 12. Keep going. You guys should know that already. Let's talk about overall. You're going to want to have a good warm up for this one. And the problem is with this workout is 7 minutes is not very long. You need to make sure that you're thoroughly warmed up because you're not going to have a lot of time to kind of get into your groove in this workout. So you want to make sure that you have a thorough warm up and that you can hit it hard right from the beginning because you want to get through those first few rounds very quickly. And that's the next thing is you want to get through those first, either the 3s and the 6s, maybe in the 3, 6s and the 9s at a pretty good clip. Just because of all those transitions, there's a little bit of rest built in. This is good for people who aren't good at pacing. It's going to help kind of meter you a little bit. Now that being said, you want to make sure you have fast transitions. And the reality is a lot of people, they take the transition time to breathe, get chalk, get water, whatever, and they don't realize how much time they're wasting by on those transitions. You're much better off hustling immediately from the thrusters to get a set of pull-ups in, or immediately from the pull-ups to get those first thrusters in. So we really want to minimize transitions. I'll be coming back to that multiple times in the video. You're going to want to use the pull-ups to kind of pace this one. And we'll talk about this on thrusters too. But the reality is that every time you pick up the bar, that's extra work that doesn't give you any credit. That's not giving you any progress toward your goal. So if you can, you'd rather, even if you are pretty good at pull-ups, you'd rather just take a moment during the pull-ups because jumping up into the bar doesn't take a lot of energy versus having to drop the bar from the thrusters. So you might stop with a few reps left on the pull-ups so that you can get chalk and get ready, do the last 3 pull-ups, and then rush over and start your next set of thrusters. That's going to be the best strategy. I put repeats on here. I'll talk about that toward the end of the video. Let's talk about shoes. You should wear Oli shoes for this. I think some people don't like wearing Oli shoes for chest bar pull-up workouts because they think it's going to affect them. But ultimately, because of the way the kipping works, it shouldn't affect your chest bar pull-ups. It actually should be pretty, because your feet are in free fall when you're doing a chest bar pull-up, it shouldn't be really hard on your pull-ups, but it's going to make your thrusters a lot easier. It's going to make you have a much more upright torso with the spine stacked, and so that's going to make you more efficient on thrusters. So kind of similar with grips. The thing is about grips is that if you're not used to wearing gloves or grips, you shouldn't try them for this workout. You're like, oh man, this is a grip workout, so I need to make sure that I wear grips. It's like, the problem is if you're not comfortable with the tool, it could mess you up. Now, if you're unsure, if you've used them off and on, and you're not really sure, maybe your hands are a little shredded from previous workouts, you might start with them and then just get through those first few rounds and then strip them off. It's much easier to take them off. And if you get through the 9s, for example, that's 18 pull-ups with some sort of protection. And then when you go into later rounds, your hands won't be shredded. Versus if you jack up your hands on the set of 9 or 12, it's going to make anything beyond that a lot harder. Let's jump into the movement. So thrusters, right? I can't believe you guys picked thrusters. Why did you have to pick thrusters? I'm just kidding. I hate thrusters. I'd rather do overhead squats. But the biggest thing on thrusters, and this counts for everybody, whether you're a beginner or more intermediate or advanced, is we want to make sure that we're snapping at the top of the thruster to get the bar overhead. I think a lot of people, when they get tired, when they get fatigued, they'll end up standing and then pressing, and it's not a very aggressive pop. We want to make sure we have an aggressive extension of the hips at the top to get that bar overhead. And then for some people, now some of these things are if you are a stronger athlete and the load isn't really the problem, or even in the first rounds, maybe the load isn't a problem because you're fresh, you may not want to hold it in a full front rack. So for a lot of people, the front rack where you're actually resting the bar on the shoulder is going to be an ideal scenario because then it's not on your wrist and you're not holding the bar. But the fastest people who do Fran and thrusters, they'll actually hold the bar in their hands and keep their elbows down, and that's going to allow you a faster transition going through that. So if it is a lightweight for you, or at least early on, you might do these really fast thrusters holding the bar versus going into a front rack. Sneak unders. Sneak unders are a term I use. Sometimes call them squat curls. But basically, you do not have to stand all the way up and to squat clean or do a power clean and then front squat. Again, if the bar is somewhat light for you, you're going to be able to just do a little pull and then sneak under it to get to the bottom of the thruster and go up. Now, these are going to be really, really good in those earlier rounds because there's a lot of transitions. But even if you plan on dropping the bar later on, maybe because your engine needs a little bit more metering, if you want to break up those thrusters, doing the sneak under is going to pay less of a penalty than trying to do a full squat clean to get under it. Now, this is another advanced concept, and that's free fall. And so thrusters are one of the best examples of when we can use free fall to make the workout more efficient. And what I mean is that a lot of people don't realize that the fastest people doing thrusters, they'll go up overhead with the bar, and then they're not slowing the bar down as it comes down. They're telling themselves to pull the bar down. Now, are they physically pulling the bar down? Probably not. What's really happening is by sending those signals to your body, you're turning off the muscles. The muscles are lengthening a lot faster, so you're not slowing the bar down and using energy. And so, again, if this bar weight isn't terribly heavy for you, you want to think about down fast. And that's going to be, it's going to increase the cycle time, so it could be a little bit more intense because of that, but you're going to finish much faster than somebody else who's not doing that, and you're actually going to use less total energy from doing that. So try to use the free fall if you can. Now, when it comes to, there's two ways to break up the thrusters or kind of control the thrusters. You can either pause at the top where you're taking a breath, and then you're going to come back down. So, hold on a second. Just checking my recording. So start recording. Oops. Thanks guys for hanging in with me. We're talking about thrusters. So you want to breathe or pause at the top, and then you can take a few moments and then go down. So when you're getting into the 9s and the 12s, if those are those sets that you might be able to do unbroken, without dropping the bar, you're going to want to take a little bit of time to breathe at least once during that set so that you can finish the set, right? As opposed to just dropping the bar, right? So as we get to the bigger sets, depending on where you're at, it could be the 15s. I guess Beyond the Whiteboard statistics say about 50% of the people got into the 15s. I think those were, that's I don't know how up to date that is, but that's probably a pretty good guide. They have lots of examples of that, people doing that workout even recently. But so you want to make sure that you pause at the top and breathe. And then the other thing is that you want to, if you do break, try to break it up to no more than once per set and about half the reps. And so things change if you get to the 18s. For those of you guys getting to the 18s, nice job. But if you get to the 19s to the 21s, you might break it up twice. But the idea is that you want to get slightly more than half of the reps. And so if that's the 9s, you want to do 5, drop, and then 4. And there's a psychological thing that goes on with that. If you only crank out a few reps, or you only do half the reps or less than half the reps, mentally it's very hard after doing a set of thrusters to then go do another set of thrusters that's going to be bigger. So if you can, try to plan on breaking it up. Now that being said, again, talking about the fast transitions and minimizing time, I don't want you to walk up to the bar and say, okay, I've got to do 7 thrusters. The problem with doing that is that if you do 7 thrusters, the problem, and mentally that that's going to be hard, you will take more time to pick up that bar. And this is something I've seen hundreds of times, maybe even thousands of times, is that when we have a plan, there's this like, okay, I'm going to do it. Here I go. All right. And then they go do it. And first is like, just get a set done. Just start. And then if it's the 12s, for example, maybe you do 3 or 4, and then you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good, and then you drop, right? And then you can get chalk, get organized, and then start your next set. And you could finish the set, and you might break it up another time. But don't let the plan really make you go a lot slower, right? Which is what we see. But the best case scenario is to try to do more than half the reps in the thrusters. Again, if you have to pause, maybe pause on these later sets, you can still pause and breathe a couple times with the bar overhead, and then you can still do a drop at one point. Just make sure that you after you drop it, one of the best pacing strategies you can use is to count your breath. So deep breaths before you start going. Start breathing through your nose, start trying to calm your central nervous system and count them. So if you start counting and you're like 7 or 8 breaths and you haven't picked up the bar again or done the next set of chest to bars, you're probably resting too long. All right, so for, let's make sure we lock out too. So just make sure that on this one that you're not bringing that bar out in front, that you're getting full extension and you're locking that bar out overhead every time. You don't want to get no rep on this workout. It's just really, it punishes you for your score, and it punishes you, punishes you because there's not enough time, and it punishes you because it's using extra energy, right? So this is one of the ones where clean reps are going to be good, just like a lot of the ones, but especially this one. Let's talk about pull-ups. So chest to bar pull-ups, just like thrusters, use your hips and legs. I think a lot of people get really caught up in trying to reach their chest toward the bar, and they're not really using their legs for a really big kip. So you want to make sure you've got a very efficient big kip with the legs, and that's going to get you up to the bar. It's not an arm pull, it's a leg and hip swing. Just as a quick note on that, when you're doing these, you want to make sure that think about expanding your chest and driving the elbows back at the top. So what that does is it brings the chest closer to the bar, it recruits some of the muscles in the back, and then you can do that. Now, if you are doing butterfly pull-ups, only do them if you're comfortable with them. But just make sure that when you're doing butterflies, you actually want to think about leaning back and hitting kind of low on it, and that's going to help you maintain your rhythm. But it's really important that you get that elbows back position on the butterflies. If you're doing regular kipping pull-ups, the elbow thing still applies, but it's not as critical because you're not trying to go under the bar and not hit your face. Now, for most people, small sets are going to be a good idea, and what that means is that small's a relative term. So again, if you're a pull-up ninja, small sets might be 12, But I think a lot of people don't realize is that pull-ups, doing 6 pull-ups, dropping, and then 6 more right after that doesn't cost you a lot of time. It actually, because there's not a lot of energy jumping up to the bar compared to the thrusters where we have to pay that time penalty to get the bar in position. So what you're going to want to do is start breaking these up and use the pull-ups as kind of the pacer for the thrusters, right? So you might even break the pull-ups up 3 times. You might do, on the 15s, you might do 6, 5, 4, right? So you might do 6 pull-ups, stop, rest, chalk up, 5 pull-ups, get ready. Now what you're thinking is, I'm going to do 4 pull-ups and go right back to the barbell. So there's no rest, and so that way you might take a little bit more time on that last set of pull-ups, but you're going to be fresh for the thrusters, sort of fresh, but as opposed to like grinding out set 8 reps and then 7 reps, and then you're like, oh, my grip, and I'm blown up, and then I have to like take a moment to do you're better off breaking the pull-ups up on that. So some people are going to benefit, and some of you more beginner folks or people who aren't really good at pull-ups are going to benefit from singles. So find a bar that's not super high that you have to jump way up to, and then just do 1 rep at a time, and you'll be surprised at how many people you beat with that strategy of just doing 1 rep at a time, steady, because you're going to be a little bit less rested. And if you do singles, you're going to want to touch and then let go, right? So so you're saving that negative. It's going to save your grip a little bit. It's going to use a little less energy. It'll take you a little bit more time to get through the set, but compared to somebody who does 8 and then 7 with a long rest, you may end up beating them. But in general, because it's less energy and a little bit more time, it's going to mean the thrusters are going to go a lot faster because you're not as blown up. So think about small sets, think about singles if pull-ups aren't your jam. I wanted to mention changing up your grip. So some people are going to do better narrow, some people are going to do better wide. Some people might like to do mixed grip. If you're somebody who struggles with chest to bar, you may actually, especially because of shoulder restrictions, you may actually do better with one hand turned over, and that allows you to drive that elbow back and get that a bar closer and actually touch the chest where it's supposed to. So think about turning one hand. The reason why I mentioned changing up the grip too is that it prevents tearing of the hands or whatever. And we already talked about butterflies. So again, if you guys have any questions or comments and you're watching this live, post it here so that I can address them. What I wanted to mention was repeats. So this is the end of the open, week 5, right? So again, depending how you feel, if your hands are good, this isn't a terrible amount. If you might want to do this one a second time and strategy-wise. We did this one back in November and I think May of this last year, so we've done it twice in the last year. We also did one that was thrusters and pull-ups, I think in February. I think it was called Black Hole. It had a little sprint in there. Similar rep scheme as far as like the number of reps that most people are going to get. So you should be fairly familiar. So a repeat here isn't the worst in the world, but just keep in mind that you know, depending on where you're at and what your goals are, you know, if you have to repeat to make regionals, you know, the age qualifier regional or the regular regional, then yeah, you're gonna want to repeat. But it's the end of the Open. We're not worried about what's going on next week. Just make sure you're not repeating just out of ego or because or risking injury, right? That's the biggest thing I'm always worried about when people start talking about repeats. Now, for those people who are struggling with pull-ups, maybe you haven't got, well, in Thrivestry we've been doing, we did a 7 weeks of strict pull-up practice, really working on developing the base level of strength for pull-ups. So if you're really close to getting those pull-ups, the one rep, it might be good to practice and work with your coach to try to like see if you can get that kipping chest to bar. I've even had people do a chest to bar, no joke, where they actually come up and they let go and through their arm and touch their chest, and that counts as a rep, right? So they're actually coming up and going. So I'm pretty sure that's still allowed. I haven't reviewed I did look at the newest standards. It doesn't say you have to hold onto the bar the entire time, but there are ways we can get people just to get 1 or 2 pull-ups at a time. For those of you guys who are thinking scaled, if you can do 1 chest to bar pull-up, please do at least a round or 2 to get on the leaderboard. And then if you want a good workout, just go ahead and finish everything else with the jumping chest to bar or what the standard is for your category. I'd still rather see you get placed on the leaderboard where you deserve to be, rather than scaling back. I think some people scale the workouts because of they don't want to. It's an ego thing, and they don't want to put themselves out there. And so I'd rather you guys just put it out there. And so when this workout or something similar comes up down the road, you get a real measure of your level. So that's it, guys. I'm not seeing a ton of questions. This one's pretty straightforward as far as just 2 movements. Get through it. Get through these first rounds quickly. Then try to break up the other rounds later on, and use the pacing, use the pull-ups for pacing, not as much the thrusters, and have fun, guys. Last week of the Open. That's it. I'll see you guys in another video coming out soon.